The other thing that's going on in Japanese political economy right now is the wage growth has eclipsed what the Japanese government predicted it would be. So if you'll remember, the spring wage offensive, which ends in May, and then people get elevated bonuses, they get their salaries increased by a certain number of percentage points. That starts in May, and then it carries out throughout the year. And it really is guided pretty much by the large trade union, particularly Rengo, which is the amalgamation of all the trade unions in Japan, and they negotiate with the Japanese government and with some of the companies on behalf of their workers. And they succeeded in generating wage growth that was just historic. 30 years. It's the best wage growth that employees have had, probably around 3.3% a wage increase, which means that their salaries got kicked up a couple of percentage points, and then maybe they got in some instances, a very hefty annual bonus. So the annual bonus is not repeated year after year. So the commitment of the companies to repeat that year after year. But for the year that it is issued, wage growth is reflected in that. And so the Japanese companies have increased the wages probably around 2.1%, but with inflation growing at a clip of about 3.4%, actual wages have decreased by about 1.2%. So although the Japanese government is trying very hard to grow wages, so that this virtual cycle that Mr. Kishi has talked about, where wage growth is in harmony with people purchasing more products and more investment, and companies growing, and then they spit out dividends to their shareholders, and then they spend more money. It's beginning to show maybe green buds growing from the ground. At least that's the way the Bank of Japan is looking at it. But their assessment of what the inflation rate should be, they're shooting for 2%. They've overshot that now, but there are signs that it is beginning to have some impact. We won't know. They're having a Bank of Japan meeting at the end of this month. We don't expect any big issues there. But if you're watching the yen value, it has fallen. This time last week, it was 145 yen to the dollar. It is today, I think, 142, which is a pretty significant increase in the value. But once the Japanese yen hits 145, certainly 150, intervention looms. And the last time they did that was October of last year, with a tremendous infusion of Japanese capital to cool that down, to bring the yen value lower. I think they don't want to do that, so it is significant that it's fallen by maybe 3 yen over this last, or yes, 3 yen over this last 2-week period. So it's something to keep your eye on. Wage growth is also, the prices of goods continue to rise. It's a bad sign, because the trajectory of rising prices, we talked about maybe 7,000 products, consumer products, going through price rises in July. And in August, the subsidy that the Japanese government pays for fuel costs will be removed. So those costs will once again go up without the Japanese government subsidy. So the rising prices for consumer goods is continuing to grow. I don't know if wages are going to continue to grow, but what happens is, with the successes in the spring offensive, other companies are beginning to mimic that, and it is beginning to spread out throughout the economy. So everybody enjoys what the benefits are gained from the labor negotiations in May. That's probably died down, but with the number of people that are searching for jobs and the number of jobs available, prices for employment are set to rise. Who knows if that really makes any difference with the inflation continuing to grow? So they're watching that very, very closely.